It's abrupt.
What if I told you everything you know about the Mayans may not be true? I used to think they were just an ancient civilization that sacrificed people, worshipped idols, had a special calendar, and disappeared one day. I was wrong. I have traveled to a land where the Maya still exists. And they have shown me the truth. For centuries, evil forces have invaded them. Outsiders have exploited them. Violence, judgment, racism, and hate have pounded at their walls. But the Mayans have stood their ground. Come explore an ancient civilization fighting to keep their culture alive and learn what it means to be Maya. Because although their ways of life are thought to be extinct, the Maya are alive and well.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Lance Hastings, and I want to thank you for coming tonight. It's going to be exciting time, I hope, for not only us, Brady, and for me in terms of being able to share the information with you, but I hope it is also an exciting time for you. We hope to be able to transport you to a different culture, to really a different time, and we're going to challenge your thinking tonight. We're going to challenge the paradigms that many of us have brought here tonight, that have been a part of our lives for so very, very long. No one who is here tonight, who has lived here in the Yucatan for even a short period of time, or who has visited on and off, or who has lived here for a number of years, believes that the Maya no longer exist. We know differently. We know that they are alive and well. And yet, my personal experience as an American, I'm not sure if the Canadians are here. How many Canadians do we have in the audience? Okay, we have a number of Canadians. How many Europeans do we have in the audience? Number of Europeans. I'm not sure how it is in Canada or in Europe, because I don't have that inside information, but I do know for a fact that when I go back to the States, many people are totally oblivious to the fact that the Maya are still alive and well. The only thing that they know usually and that they share is their misinterpretations, misunderstandings, that the Maya are a dead civilization and all they did was practice human sacrifice. And I know that I'm old enough that when I went to school, I learned in world history, world geography about the Inca. I learned about the Aztecs. But the only thing I learned about the Maya was that it is a dead civilization. Nobody knows why they disappeared, and they did human sacrifices. And the reality is that neither one of those facts is true. I was fortunate enough 4 years ago. I've been living among the Maya now for the past 4 years. And 4 years ago, I came here just before COVID as a tourist. I had read a book called The Lost City of the Monkey God. I don't know if anybody's ever read that. It's a very scary book in terms of what life is like in the jungle, but it began to pick my interest with respect to the Maya. And because I didn't know anything about them, I took a little bit more interest and a little bit more interest, and pretty soon I was reading the books of Stevens and Catherwood. Pretty soon I was reading some of the books of Eric Thompson, another archaeologist who were here, Theobert Mahler, some of his photography. And I began to learn more and more that the Maya was really a very fantastic civilization that I had very little knowledge of. And so I booked a tour where my wife and I came with a young Mayan. It was actually out of Valladolid, who had a tour group called Eco Mayan Adventures. And I thought, well, this sounds good. And so he and a fellow tour guide of his in his company, he was only in his early 20s at that time, both of them were very, very young, I thought, oh boy, what are these young guys going to be able to teach me? And so they were very friendly and they introduced themselves, but the very first thing one of them said to me was, now, we're going to Ekbalam. And have any of you been to Ekbalam? Okay, some of you know that. We're going to Ekbalam, and the first thing I want you to do is to forget everything that the white man has taught you. Because he said much of the stuff that you will have learned in the books written by archaeologists is just simply not true. He said, we are going to show you these ruins, and we're going to tell you about these ruins through the eyes of us Mayans who actually grew up in this area. Our ancestors are the ones who were involved in excavations. Our ancestors told us about these stories. And so both of them began to share with us the inside scoop, I guess you want to call it, in terms of what was actually going on in this Mayan civilization, how advanced they were, their ways of thinking. They began to just challenge some of my thinking that I had never really known before. And when we left, after the tour, they did a lovely tour. One of them, the guy actually at the top, right there in the middle, this little guy right there. You can't see me. Jesus, right here, this guy here. He was one of the, he was the tour guide, the younger tour guide, and then this was the one that said to me, forget everything that the white man taught you. Actually, he said to me then when we were finished, he said, well, thank you very much. He said, you're now part of my family, and I'd like to keep in touch. And I thought, well, this is a great business ploy. You're now one of my family. And I thought, well, he knows how to run a business. And so when I went home, I emailed him. He gave me his card. I emailed him as a little thank you note. And he began to correspond with me. And he speaks fluent English. He also speaks fluent French and Spanish and Mayan. And so he began to communicate with me, and we began to really strike up a friendship. And so he said to me, why don't you come back and let me introduce you to my family, let me introduce you to my village, and let me teach you a little bit of the Mayan ways. Now, the area that we're focusing on, and we're this group of people, these are all my personal friends, these people live is in the area around Coba, which is actually in the state of Quintana Roo. It's about 3 hours from here going toward Cancun. It's about 40 minutes inland from Tulum. And it's a little bit different from the Yucatan because, as you know, for those of you who don't know, I'll say this, for those of you who do know, forgive me, but the Yucatan Peninsula basically consists of 3 different states, Campeche, Yucatan, and Quintana Roo. The Maya here of the Yucatan, where we are now, where Merida is, were very much historically influenced by, of course, the Spanish. They invaded this part and they established Merida, and so many of the Mayan who live in this area have a lot of Spanish, historically, a lot of Spanish blood mixed in with them and have been a part of the whole Spanish colonial system in terms of history. Those in Quintana Roo, though, are a little bit more, if you want to use the term, pure Mayan, because the Spanish never made it over into that part of the Yucatan Peninsula. And so when the caste war was here and there was the rebellion and everything, many of the Mayan who scattered after that settled into the jungle areas there of Quintana Roo. The area that we particularly focused in was not heavily, there were no plantations there, no haciendas like you have here in this part of the Yucatan with the henequen plantations. Those who were in that area earned their living for the most part by being chicleros. Are you familiar with that term, chicleros? Chicleros were basically Mayans who penetrated the forest looking for the chiclo sapote tree. The chiclo sapote tree had a resin, and what they did, sap, what they did was basically cut it, just like we would cut maple trees back in northern United States and Canada for maple syrup. They would cut it, and the sap and the resin that would come out would be used then would be boiled and turned gummy. In the old days, it was what was then exported here to the States to companies like Wrigley to make chewing gum. And so many of the Maya actually were chicleros who harvested this chiclo sapote tree. They did not come under the influence of the Spanish. They were more the indigenous Maya, if you want to use the word, uncontaminated by outside influence along those lines. So when he said to me, you want to be part of my family and you want to come over to my village, this was a totally new experience for me because I was familiar with the Mayans here in the Yucatan, but I was not familiar with the Mayans over there in Coba. So he met me, and that began a 4-year journey in which I became more and more involved in their lives. I learned their traditions. I learned Mayan. They taught me Mayan. They taught me their ways. They taught me about their spirituality. And little by little, they actually adopted me as an official Mayan and gave me the name of Lencho. So here in Mexico, particularly over in that part of Quintana Roo, my name is Lencho Canul. And that's how everybody knows me. And so when I arrive in the villages now, it's, oh, Lencho Canul, hello, hello, hello. But that began my thinking that, you know, if I'm experiencing this immersion, there might be other people that would really like to do that as well. And so 2 years ago, just briefly, Brady will get into this in a little bit more detail. 2 years ago, I contacted him, and we began a collaboration then as to how could we put on film and some documentary the kinds of experiences that I have had that we would be able to share with others. And I use the word experience because very often, well, let me put it this way, you know there are a zillion tours that you can go on. But rather than just being an observer, what Jesus, that's the guy's name, Jesus offered me was an immersion. Come and experience what it is to be Mayan. And so I enticed Brady to basically come and do that as well. And he'll talk much more about all of that in terms of what it entailed for us to come together to be a filmmaker and to put this on film as well and everything else. But it began then to take root. We started out with the film idea entitled I Am Mayan. Now, I want to bring this up because it is a significant point. Mayan is only used, M-A-Y-A-N, is only used to refer to the language. If you talk about everything else, it is Maya, M-A-Y-A. And so we started out with the idea, even though we knew it was politically incorrect and grammatically incorrect to use the word Mayan, again, our world, my world that we had back in the States, that's how they thought of it. And so they could connect a little bit of dots if they had the word Mayan, but they really couldn't connect all the dots with the word Maya. As we began to spend time with them in the film, in making the film, we realized that they were beginning to reveal to us some secrets because we went in there with the idea of, okay, if the Maya are truly alive and well, what is the secret to this civilization still staying alive when everybody else thinks it's dead? And since they have opened up their hearts to me, since they had opened up their homes to me, and I could speak the language to some extent, and of course they all speak Spanish anyhow, they would take me deeper and deeper into their thoughts. And so I want to lay a foundation for the film, and I want to lay a foundation, if I will, for the rest of our discussion tonight as to what the secrets of Coba really are. And we call them the secrets of Coba because Coba, the ruins of Coba, Coba was the second largest Mayan city after Tikal in Guatemala. It was a city, a trade center in that part of Quintana Roo. It was a trade center that at the height of it had about 55,000 people. It covered about 70 square kilometers. It had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buildings. It was famous because from the center, from Coba, there were numerous highways called sakbays, which went out from it, kind of like our interstates, which went out into other parts of Mexico, into other cities, particularly to the coast of the Caribbean for trade purposes, and as far west, about 100 kilometers west, to Yaxuna, which is near Chichen Itza. And so it was a very extensive trade center, and because it was a very extensive trade center, it was very, very important in terms of that entire area and that entire region. The most Mayan cities, as we know them with the ruins right now, were ceremonial centers or were government centers. They weren't really cities where people lived. They were more like if you want to equate it to what we would have, think in the Middle Ages you had a monastery, and then you had kind of, the houses and that around the monastery where the church and the state kind of came together. Well, that's exactly how the Mayans, they were really city-states. The different Mayan areas were really different city-states. It was not one big empire like the Inca Empire. And so Cobá was very, very important there, and a number of the places around Cobá, after Cobá began its decline, a number of those places then became more or less little, not really suburbs, but jump-offs from the big ceremonial center, because you had, again, 55,000 people there. And so they would form their own little villages around that area. Mérida, for example, just to give you kind of a comparison, all right, the actual ceremonial city center of Mérida was where the plaza is, the Grand Plaza. But around Mérida was about 5 different little villages, 5 different areas. And so it was really one whole kind of conglomerate area, but the main area downtown by the plaza was really the ceremonial center with the pyramid. That is really what the Spanish tore down then to build the churches, and which left then the Mayans in all of the outlying areas. So when I went there and they began to take me deeper into their way of thinking in that, I learned that the secret that they were beginning to reveal to me was a way of thinking that was a very foreign concept. Now, in theory, kind of, we knew this kind of existed, but I had never really seen it in practice. And in Mayan, it is the great vision that they have, the great, how can I say this, the spiritual foundation of the entire civilization could be summed up in the Mayan phrase, Inlak Ech Alak En. Inlak Ech Alak En, which actually translates, I am you, you are me. For the Mayans, that concept embodies 3 major elements. One element is that there is a strong connection between the Supreme Creator and fellow man, and a strong connection between fellow man with each other as well as with nature. There is a misconception that the Mayans were pagan. That really is not true in the true Mayan and forgive me sometimes I confuse my word, antiquidades, in the ancient ways. Okay? What they believed in was a supreme God, a supreme being. But there was such a connection between God and his creation, whether it was animals or other men, or man and each other, that there was that everything would have, they respected everything. And so in nature, they would respect the nature. And yes, they talked a lot about the god Chak, which would be the god of rain, for example. But it was less a pagan kind of god, and it was much more a direct manifestation, if you will, of the extension of the Creator himself. Fine line, but a very significant line. Because that whole concept of Inlak Ech then believes, number one, that connection is everything, and that it is very much comes from the top down. Given that, the second concept that goes along with Inlak Ech is that we are grateful for everything. And the basic belief there is, as we freely give, we will freely receive back. Because again, we are all connected. And so in Mayan, for example, there is no word for please. Now, I speak a little bit of German, I speak Spanish, I speak a little bit of French, I speak English. You know, we learn how to say please. When I was learning Mayan, I could not find a word for please. And I would ask the people, what's the word for please? And they would just look at me. And the concept there is, why would I ask you please to do something? It's a foregone conclusion you will do it for me. And it's like, whoa, okay, you know? Because we are one and we are connected in that sense. By the same token, right, the Mayans have an expression for thank you, which translates in the Mayan of Quintana Roo, Yum Botik. Yum there means God, Boutique means will pay. Here in the Yucatan, a little bit different, they will say Dios boutique, right? Still, same thing, God will pay. Again, the concept there is, I'm so grateful for everything, you do not have to pay me back for this. It's a privilege to do it because as I freely give, I know that what will ever come from this activity, I will receive in return. And God will basically reward us both for doing what He wants us to do. The third component that goes with that, and this is really the mind-blowing component of in Lak'ech Alak'en, is that the Mayans believe that sacrifice and hard work is a privilege. They do not equate sacrifice and hard work with a burden. It is a foreign concept that some may have, I had. Let's work hard so we can retire and now do what we want to do. That's a foreign concept to the Mayans because for the Mayans, hard work is a blessing. It is a privilege that we have because in my hard work that I am doing, I am working for you. It is amazing to me how much they will do without any expectation of compensation for it. It's the right thing to do, and so we do it. And so when Jesus said to me at the end of our tour, we're family now, the concept that he had was coming from this in Lak'ech Alak'en perspective of course we're family. You are my brother. And for the Mayans, since you are my brother, the more we do together, the more we share together, the more we attend to each other, the more we learn from each other, the more we feel what each other is feeling, the more that connection will grow. And as that connection grows, and as we do these things, the wiser we will become and the more rewarding life will be. Those are concepts that for many of us, we seem to know and we seem to think, yeah, somewhere along the line we heard that, but boy, is that rosy thinking. You know, I mean, maybe some of us may have come from the church background and it was preached to us and we thought, yeah, that's great. But we don't oftentimes see it in action in terms of some of our cultural things in some of our society. And so, you know, one of the things that I learned from the Mayans is that I really learned from them how to put that into practice. And it was very difficult in some respects to respond to that because I still come from the perspective of if you're doing something for me, there must be a cost behind it. And not that not in a bad way of well, surely you want something more of this. But, many times I grew up in the way of thinking that you don't, if somebody's doing something nice for you, let me pay for that. Or let me buy you a gift for that in return or something like that. And it's not expected with the Mayans. And so they taught us there's a happiness there and a joy there that basically says our mission in life is to continue this on. And that's one of the reasons why they strongly believe that the Mayans are still alive and well, is because deep down, that mission, that vision that they had, that spirit that they had, has never really died. Now, there are definitely some who have basically tossed that out and said, I don't want that. And in our conversations with them, I would ask them, why do you think this is happening? And a lot of times the response to me was, regardless who said it, because of technology. Because now the young people see there is another way to do this than what we had. And because there's another way to do it, maybe that's a better way. And it's almost, these are their words, it's almost they feel like their kids are being brainwashed into thinking that there is a better way than the old ways. I'll give you a perfect illustration example that was explained to us. And it's in planting, okay? Anybody can go to YouTube and learn anything. And, we have all these scientific ways for agriculture and for planting. And it was interesting because, the Mayans basically come historically from the perspective of living on milpas, which they're little farms. And they said, we learned from our ancestors, because that's again a part of in Lak'ech Alak'en. They still believe totally in the whole system of It is the responsibility of the elders to teach the young and to pass it down. And they accept that responsibility. You know, in one family that we're going to be highlighting here, the father, there were like, what did they go, 4, 5, like 7 kids, 7 boys in the family, 9 kids total, 2 girls, 7 boys. The eldest son has the responsibility of passing down whatever the father teaches him. And it was amazing to watch how the younger brothers listened to what he said, because he is the eldest. And it is that hierarchy that then goes down in the mentoring, so that they not only work together, but there is that sense that I can learn something from those who know more than me. And one of the things technology is doing right now is basically saying you don't need to listen to the old folks. We can basically teach you how to do it, and you can bypass that system. And with the agriculture, you know, they tried some of the systems that they learned on the YouTube, and yet they go back and they think, but you know, it was our ancestors that realized that if you plant corn together with squash, together with beans, they will all, again, that in lak etch, alak en, they will all support each other in the growing and put them all together, and it's perfect nutrition. Why do we need the internet? And yet, there's that conflict that comes in along those lines. So the underlying foundation, I'm going to turn this over to Brady then, the underlying foundation that we learned from here, and that I want to leave with you in terms of what this is all about, is that we focused on 2 families. The family called the Cahoons and the family called the Canules. Remember, I'm a Canule. And so how those 2 families, basically in this film, are learning to live within the modern world, but at the same time not forsake the ancient ways by holding on to the integrity and the essence of what that Mayan concept of in lak etch alak en really is. And so there's a constant navigating that they need to do in order to make sure that they can maintain those customs, maintain that way of life, but at the same time be able to deal with the kinds of changes that are coming around them, and how to take advantage in a positive way the kind of technology and the kinds of things that are showing them. That is what our film is all about. How these 2 families are maneuvering this and dealing with this, but at the same time maintaining the integrity of in lak etch alak en, so that they can move forward, and hopefully not only in terms of move forward to maintain and to save their ancient ways, which in Mayan means ushpen kushtau, but at the same time hopefully pass that on to others. And for those of us who may be looking for a way ourselves in terms of how do I navigate this new world and everything that's coming my way, when deep down perhaps I was taught some of these things as well, I see it being lost. Who is doing it that I can walk together with and journey together with and share life together with in order to make that a reality, not just for the Mayans, but for myself as well. I'm going to turn it over to Brady now and let him talk a little bit about the technical things.
Does that sound like it should be a film?
Yeah.
Alright, I actually have a little more notes on my phone here, so I'm going to reference those. So, quick summary of how this happened real quick. My name is Brady. I'm a filmmaker based in St. Augustine, Florida. Over the last 12 years, I've made about 1,000 videos, ranging from short documentaries to travel films, music videos, corporate films, wedding films, internet commercials, TV commercials, YouTube videos. And actually that is how we met, was he reached out to me because he saw a film of me going to Belize and visiting some of the ruins in Belize, as well as Guatemala, which is where Tikal is, which is the largest Maya city in the world. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's kind of funny how we're talking about how the Maya are trying to stay away from YouTube, and here we are, because of YouTube, making this film. So, very interesting. One of my biggest passions, though, has always been travel, because, you know, what is there not to love about travel before 2020? Anyway, so when I was in Belize and Guatemala, I went to some ruins and experienced them, and it was still very much about this thing just fell asleep, I think. Might have gotten disconnected. The archaeology. We'll try to get that back up in a second. Oh, there it goes. About the archaeology, and that's really what I took away from visiting the ruins. I actually left Tikal and the ruins in Belize, went back home, still didn't know that the indigenous Maya were there. So kind of amazing that you can actually go visit all that and still not know. So anyways, Lance reached out to me from this travel film. It was just a travel film of the experience. And that was 2 years after that film was published. I got an email from him on November 11th, 2020. And it just actually wasn't the right time at the time. I reached out again 6 months later. And we reconnected. And we then eventually started planning our first trip to Mexico. The first time around, we did some filming. We went there for about 4 or 5 days in Coba, and we did some filming. I planned on having Lencho as the main character in this film, guiding everyone, talking to the Maya about everything. And really what we learned was when we got back, it was really just a short travel log, and it just was not enough for how big the story was. So we were still learning at that time. Even after years of him getting to know the Maya and everything, we're still just in a learning process, like processing all this, trying to figure out the best way to turn this into a story. So we realized we needed more, and we needed to really work on what the story's all about. And I was able to make a trailer from it. So the trailer you watched was a trailer from that first trip over a year ago. And I was able to make a trailer as we started developing the concept and story for this film from that footage. So that actually does not include all the new, better footage that we have. And we decided that this will probably be a feature-length documentary. He originally approached me and just said, I'd love for you to go with me and experience this, and if you want to film something, that's great, but you really don't have to. And we learned that, after going, I was like, this is easily a 60-minute film in my mind. If it ends up being less, that's fine, but I think there's at least an hour of things here and stories to tell. And so what we did was we took about a year and started working on all that on paper and writing down all these ideas and just writing and rewriting and going over everything in our heads about what we knew. And of course, I've learned a lot from him. Most of the things I know are because of him as far as all of this goes. Because I'm really going to be talking about filmmaking because that's where I come from. And I'm not a Hollywood producer, I want to make that clear. I'm really just an independent artist, filmmaker, so I really don't believe that a Hollywood producer would have even gotten involved in this because they just have too many agendas. So what we're really focusing on here, the overall theme and message, what is that? Characters, main characters, the location, which of course we have Coba. The conflict. Conflict's the big one I'm going to talk about in a little bit. What's the struggle? Another one I'll talk about later. The story arc, the tension, the suspense, empathy, love. These are all emotions that we see in films, and they're what move us when we watch them. An inspiring resolution that could maybe give hope to someone. And what this film really takes in doing a documentary like this for me is listening and being open-minded. When you dive into a culture, a completely different culture from your own, that's going to be number one. You better be willing to listen and learn, and that's really been the key for this film. You can write down as many ideas as you want, but it's their story, and I want to hear it from them, the Maya families themselves. So, be open-minded. Like, you have to be willing to leave your beliefs and normalities at home and immerse yourself in their ways. Perhaps a whole year of development and planning, which is what it took. It's another thing it took. Tremendous amount of patience, chemistry with who you work with, trial and error. And the reality is you probably don't want to take something on on like this by yourself. I've done a lot of films by myself, and I knew this was one that was not going to happen by myself. It takes a village, it takes a crew. And eventually we came to the conclusion that it would actually be a better film if I was in it as a narrator, and it would make things more interesting being a foreigner and an American coming to a place like this who is willing to immerse himself in the culture and learning from them. And there's a lot more we could do with that and piece everything together, because there's just so many different directions you could take all this and so much to say. And then you have the language barrier, which I'll get into in a little bit. And so we decided that I should be in this. So I called upon one of my best friends and one of the most talented people I know, who just got on a plane in Merida and flew back to northern Montana, right next to Glacier National Park. He was here with us for a couple weeks filming. And I'm just going to share a couple of the challenges we dealt with over the last few weeks in regards to making this film. You can have people cancel if they don't feel well. Weather's another one. Rain, for example. I love the rain, but audio is so important. And when it rains, you may go do an interview, and now you don't have it anymore because it's raining. Movies are often 70% sound, so very heavily focused on audio. We often wore multiple hats. If I wasn't helping Justin film or filming something myself or on camera, I would be boom micing and helping get sound. From a jungle perspective, as far as the camera goes, partly cloudy days with trees and sunlight coming through trees and spots on people's faces. There's a lot of technical things, very challenging in this environment, like the humidity, lenses fogging up, things like that. Then you have the language barrier, which is probably number one. And without Lance, there's absolutely no way we would have done this or developed any relationships. And he speaks fluent Spanish. I do not. My Spanish is limited. I can get by, but it's not fluent. And if you're really going to get to know someone, you have to be fluent to really get into those conversations. So it's really all about developing relationships, and he just loved them as family, was willing to listen and learn from them, and in return won their hearts. You have the cultural barrier on certain things, like trying to get them to all eat at the table as a family. It's very different in their culture. The men will eat together, the women will often be behind the scenes and not sit at the table with them. And so if we wanted to film them all at the table together, they didn't really understand that. They didn't really understand getting everyone at the table together, just different culture. And then of course not denying any of the foods. So if we were offered something, we needed to eat it because that could be offensive. So of course we did. From the beginning though, what was always in the back of my mind is that this is a very sensitive subject. Indigenous culture, an indigenous culture like most of them that has been exploited for centuries. And it just became more and more clear the more time I spent with the families and the more they shared their hearts with us. Now, some of this information I'm going to mention, but it probably won't be mentioned the same way in the film. And I'll talk about why. Because you have a lot of exploitation going on. Examples, here's one example, like the tour buses. Some of the tour buses will not stop at some of the Maya homes or where they would be selling something without them giving them some sort of payment for stopping or commission for what they sell. Tours, for example, that would tour a village for the family that we're working with would take a very high percentage of the money for bringing someone there and pay them very little for actually giving the tour. So, I could go on and on about that as far as the amount of exploitation. You have the commercialization of big tour companies operating in these areas that are obviously not giving anything to the locals, trying to take over all of that. Some examples could be the cenotes. Some of you may know how commercialized the cenotes are. Some of those are owned by who knows who or where they are. The land development, of course, we're not going to get too much into that, but the civilization itself, the way that they're living right now, very much much is one with the earth and one with nature and the jungle. If they were to go build a resort and commercialize that area, the culture may not survive anymore. The mentality could go on, I think, in a city. The mentality can live in a city, but a lot of the culture would not survive without the jungle. Now, technology, like Lance mentioned, is a big one. The internet, that changed everything. You have kids becoming more and more distracted and uninterested and wanting to just learn things on the internet instead of their parents, and it kind of rolls out a lot of what their parents have to say. So that's obviously a big one. Now, the problem with including these things and telling these conflicts in this film, this is where the real struggle is. Because film is different than writing a journalism piece on a piece of paper that you could even say you're anonymous and not mention names and just say what's going on. Because you're visually showing people's faces and their locations and their homes. They're inviting us into their home. They're opening up on camera. So, like I said, from the beginning when I approached this subject, I knew it was very sensitive. And it's very important to protect these people and not do more damage than good. So every film, like Ron Howard, some of you may know Ron Howard, pretty big director, did Apollo 13, one of my favorite movies. He says every film will find a way to break your heart. This is pretty much how this one has been breaking mine a little bit. It's been a huge struggle for me as a storyteller who wants to show the conflict and the problems, because that is such a big part of storytelling, is the conflict and how someone might overcome it. But we're really having to be strategic on how we present certain sensitive information that they're telling us, because it's very much local to them and their world, and not a part of ours in America or anyone else's. And so we don't want to jeopardize anything by talking about some of these things and the wrong people finding out about them and, trying to do something about it to shut down whatever they have going on, ecotourism, things like that. So we've got to be very strategic about it, and which is why we will just include some things, and we can always show them and edit things out if needed. Show them what we do, and we'll show them our film to make sure that they approve of everything. And we can edit things out if there's things in there that they're just not comfortable with. So, like I said, if we were just writing a journalism piece and I was just writing everything on paper, it would be totally different. It would protect their identities. So, there's a lot of different directions we could have taken this film in regards to exploitation, commercialization, and technology. But ultimately, we found that the heart and soul of the people there is really the most important focus, and the fact that they are alive and well. Because I was one of those people that had no idea, even after going to Tikal and Belize, still had no idea about all the indigenous Maya. And another reason we changed the title and tried to get away from a Maya title is because really this story is taking place in Coba, so it's better to use Coba because it's really more of a micro focus. When you get into the Maya, you're talking about a lot of Central America. So we pretty much, let's see, I knew I was going to be playing a role in narrating it and be on camera as a traveler who decided to go deeper, but the most important thing is that this story comes from them and not from me. So I am really just learning from them. I will help piece things together for the audience and share my experience, but it's really taking the audience on a journey to learn from these families. So the plan moving forward now, we have just finished filming, which is awesome. I might actually film a little bit more in my hometown of St. Augustine, Florida, which is European. It's it's a very touristy place, but some European architecture. I may interview some people randomly on the street and just say, "What do you know about the Maya?" And I may include some of that in this film because I think it might be interesting. So that's just an idea I've had. Editing is probably, I'm guessing, 250 to 300 hours. That's my goal, is to have it edited within that range. We'll have a rough cut, which is basically a rough draft, and show it to them and get their feedback and see what kind of changes we want to make. But we really want to try to have this done by the summer. Sometime in the summer is the goal. Sound design, of course, is a big part, so that'll play a crucial role in the editing and the coloring. So we'll have to go through the film. Justin Rotala, who helped us film this from Montana, is an incredible filmmaker and photographer as well, and he will be coloring this film and adding all the beautiful color to it, just like you would color correct a photo. They do that for every movie. And then it'll go through the film festival circuit. So we'll submit this to film festivals and see what happens with that. Secrets of Koba will reveal the hidden truths that have kept these families persevering through the hardships of the 21st century. Contrary to popular belief, they are alive and well. They've kept their culture alive as much as they can. And this film will unveil the secrets of what it means to be a Maya family living in harmony with one another and with their land. So what can we learn from an ancient civilization that may give us hope for a better future? That's all I got right now. I'm going to turn it back over to Lance. He's going to talk about couple other little things.
Brady did not mention, but I want to mention it to him. I want to mention it about him because as an older man, seeing a younger man just getting started, I'm extremely proud of him. He is an award-winning filmmaker. He does not talk about that or brag that, but if you take a look at his website, he has done some incredible things. I have all of the faith in the world that he will be able to put this together into something that will honor the Maya as a very noble people, and that really is our goal. I want to close with just a couple things here to tell you and to share with you some of the other benefits of this film, and hopefully that perhaps you can buy into this vision as well. As Brady said, we want this film to be able to inform people that the Maya are alive and well. It is not a dead civilization in any way, shape, or form. And we want to be able to cast their vision, hopefully, into the hearts of others, that this whole concept of inlak etch alak en, we are one with one another, may help heal some of the ills of our world and the things that we are experiencing right now. But we are also, with this film, hoping to do three other things, and to use it in a way to help the Maya as well. This picture represents some of the efforts that they are making to provide experiences for other people. Again, I do not want to say tours, because it's not go and see what's going on. It's an experience to go and experience what it is to be Maya. And the picture that we had up here before was actually the Maya village that we did most of the filming in. And so this particular family here is the Cahoon family. That's a buddy of mine, Tim. And Tim and I went there last year, and they provided him with a very similar immersion to what they did with me. They take us into the homes, they feed us, they share with us their wisdom, they share with us what they're doing. And so ecotourism, if we're going to use that terminology, because that's a big terminology right now, is one of the things that they are exploring. And again, walking that balance as to how can I invite people into my world without it becoming a commercial tour, and at the same time maintaining the integrity of what it is to be Maya. So one of the things we hope to do as with our film is to be able to use it to inform other people that these opportunities do exist, and to give people an opportunity to say, this is something I would like to be involved in. The second thing that can you move that machine? I don't know how to work these things. What do I do? Okay. The second thing that we're doing, I think that goes together with this, is that we are helping them to build basically a language school. And you say, well, why a language school? Well, if you stop and think about it, the best way to share your thoughts and how you feel and who you are is with language. And so they are fluent in Mayan, they are fluent in Spanish, but Many of their visitors are French. Many of their visitors speak English. And I'm very proud of a number of them because they've taught themselves English and French just using the internet. There again, technology, how are we going to put this to use so it's going to really be able to help us? But one of the goals that they have is to basically, and this is the start of it, basically build an internet language school where they are able to now learn French and learn English, and not only for themselves to help them with their businesses and bring people in there, but also to share that with the other people in the village, because again, we are all one. The more people in the village have an opportunity to learn these languages and to speak with the visitors that come, the more the Mayan way is going to be able to be transmitted. When I do go there, I always have an English lesson with them, and this is one of the brothers that I have an English lesson with. The other thing that we're doing is we have started an art school. I am an artist, and I have found that they are very, very talented, of course, in a number of the arts. The particular people that we work with are talented in painting. They're talented in, of course, the bordado, or the sewing, which is a big part of Mayan culture. And they're very talented in wood carving. And so I have been working with them to basically teach them and establish with them some of the crafts that they have in order to raise it up beyond a mere artisan level, and I don't say that in a derogatory way, but to raise it up to a fine art level, and to teach them different techniques and to teach them different kinds of things that they're able to then express themselves through the different arts. And this particular Cahoon family has a artisan workshop there on their property that we've turned into one of the palapas into that. I have an example on the back table of a wood carving that one of my students is doing right now, and I have an example of one of the paintings that Ephraim here has done, just getting started with all of this, but our hope is to be able to take that art school and to help them develop their talents in that and basically produce a number of works. I will say this, that as we are working together in the film, not only to produce the film for knowledge in that, but also to support these three endeavors, their ecotourism, their language school, and also the art school. We would love to have you partner with us in this endeavor if you feel so inclined. And we have a basket on the back table. Any donation that you feel led tonight to give will go 100% to these Maya, to these families that we work with. That is the guarantee. And we really feel that they have given so much of us. We want to compensate them as much as we possibly can in the building of these language schools and the kind of things that they're doing. I also have some prints that I painted, some watercolors back there for sale. The large one is $50 US or 1,000 Mexican pesos. I have three smaller ones at $25 US or 500 Mexican pesos. Let me tell you just a little bit about this, because I'm painting with them, I'm working with them. As they tell me their stories, as they tell me the things that they're doing, I work together with them to try to put that into a painting. And so the painting that I have back there is called Reflections. It comes from the time that I spent with one of the ladies in the village who would sit and sell her little calabasa on the street. And as she would do that, I would talk with her. I would say, "What are you thinking about? You just seem to be lost in thought." And she'd look up at the sky and she'd say, "I'm remembering what the days used to be." And it's in the shadow of Nahochimul, which is the largest pyramid there in Koba. And, just longingly you could look in her eyes, and then she would say, "Once upon a time in a land far, far away, this is what our Maya life used to be like." It was just fascinating hearing those stories, and so I try to reflect that in the paintings that I'm doing as well. That's another way that you can partner with us if you feel so inclined to purchase one of the paintings or give a donation, whatever is on your heart. We also do have, if you want to give a donation through PayPal, we also do, what do you call those things?
GoFundMe?
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe?
I know, GoFundMe.
Oh, the QR code. Yeah. I also just want to emphasize really quickly, last thing, the importance of the language as far as keeping their culture alive. We have learned so much about how significant that is because of the words that they have and the meaning behind them. So in America, when I say thank you, very different than saying Yumbotik in Mayan, because that has a lot more meaning behind it. So very interesting for you to explore in the future if you're more interested in their language.
Both of us will just say to all of you, Yumboti.
Yeah, Yumbotik.
Thank you for coming tonight. If there are any questions now, we'll be happy to entertain them, and just thank you again for being with us. And
Yeah.